So Black Lives Matter, I imagine you're feeling pretty chipper right now. After many false starts when you've tried to exploit the tragic death of one black man after another, you finally hit pay dirt. An unarmed and handcuffed black man, pleading for his life, pinned down by a sneering and arrogant white cop who slowly and seemingly deliberately squeezes the life out of him. And it's all on camera. All 8 minutes and 48 seconds of it. You must be over the moon. I bet you couldn't have hoped for anything better. And you ran with it, didn't you? Oh boy, did you ever. First off was the obligatory ransacking of the local neighbourhoods of Minneapolis. In many cases burning whole blocks to the ground, conveniently ignoring the dozens of black homes and businesses that went with it. Explained away as collateral damage, no doubt. Then it spread, of course, to other areas, states, and indeed clear across the country, all the way to the capital. And even went overseas, the supposedly righteous anger spreading to major foreign cities like London, and even to the tiniest of backwaters, with protests even being arranged in that smouldering cauldron of racial injustice that is Douglas. Yes, Douglas, on the Isle of Man, an island in the middle of the Irish Sea. So the reach is impressive, I have to concede. But it's not just the reach, but the depth. Black Lives Matter has, it must be admitted, exposed the fragility of the majority of the West institutions in dealing with such protests. As usual, the reluctance of liberal democracies, not least in the United States, to fire on their own populations, has not been acknowledged for the generally good thing that it is, but is instead being seen as nothing more than a sign of weakness, almost as if it's an acknowledgement of America's guilt. And like marauding sharks, you blokes think you can smell blood in the water. And I can see why. You've got authorities across the globe, from the great and the good, like the Democrats in the capital, and the likes of the new leader of the Labour Party in the UK, all the way down to policemen in US cities, in London, and even in provincial cities like Bristol, literally, quite literally, prostrating themselves before the mob. I'm not surprised you're emboldened by this level of cowardice. In your shoes, I'd be encouraged to move in for the kill. But you must think it's too easy, surely, like shooting fish in a barrel. You must think this whole edifice is about to topple. To the mainstream, this may be surprising, but to anyone who has been paying attention, or who inhabits particular corners of the internet, we could see this coming, because we know that the edifice is not about to fall. How do we know this? Because it's already fallen. The long march through the institutions is complete. We've known this for some time. It started with the welfare state, it continued with the legal system, promoted by the media, consolidated by the civil service, enforced, if you can call it that, by the police force, and lorded over by the most rotten of all the rotten institutions, Parliament. Naively, we imagine that because of Brexit, we have brought this particular cur to heel. Mistakenly, we went for the Conservative Party to punish Labour for their treachery, instead of bravely taking a chance with the Brexit Party. That is our folly. As you guys burn through the free world, rioting and looting and firebombing and murdering, one thing has become abundantly clear to us. You may portray yourselves as righteous rebels, but you're not. The state is on your side, not ours. You are the establishment, and it's us that are the rebels. And I say that as a statement of fact rather than a romantic notion. I wish it wasn't so. From the Americans making use of their constitutional right to arm themselves, to the genuine patriots in Plymouth who have banded together to protect the memorial to the war dead of the Royal Navy, to the lone guy who waded through the mob to remove the insult pinned to Churchill's statue in Parliament Square, we know that the state is your friend and our enemy. Now, you might be encouraged by this. You might. But it's only an evaluation of the state of play on the ground, despite pushing to the back of your mind the feeling that you're not actually being brave or courageous in your violent rage, and that you're about to storm the gates of tyranny. You will be doing no such thing. The gates are already unlocked. They're not even latched. The merest breath will blow them open, and you will be met with open arms and bended knees by the sycophants of the British establishment, who will be hoping that you take pity on them and reward them for their betrayal. You probably think you've almost won, but you haven't thought this through. There are perhaps 8 or 9 million people in this country who could be classified as non-white, or BAME, as that nasty little acronym seeks to classify and divide us. Now, that's a lot of people, about the same as the population of London, interestingly enough. You think they're all on your side. That's unlikely, I would have said. And since we are talking black lives here, maybe she was just talking about black people. People from Africa and the West Indies and their descendants. Maybe 2 to 3 million. Are they all on your side? Perhaps that's slightly more likely, but it's by no means guaranteed. And what about all the mixed race people and their partners? There's quite a number of them. Are they all on board? Are they fully on board with the assumption that all white people, including them, are racist? As your language and rhetoric seem to be saying, either you're with us or you're against us. Do you think they're going to sign up for the deal that is being offered to them? Namely, that a white husband must kneel in supplication to his black wife, or a white wife must beg her black husband for forgiveness for her being white. Now, I've always been prepared to stand with black people against racial injustice, although it's mostly theoretical, since it's never really been tested, it has to be said. But if I were in that situation, I don't think I'd be married very much longer. But in the same way that many black men think that white people are afraid of them, you also think that we're all afraid of something else. You still, laughably, think that we're afraid of being called racist. We're not. We've been inoculated against that particular insult because it has been used so often and so indiscriminately and so inaccurately. We have become immune to it. Now it's water for a duck's back. Where once it stuck and we allowed it to stain our characters, possibly because in the past there was a touch of shame to it, because there might have been some truth in it. Now we know it is a lie and that we have nothing to be ashamed of. It just slides off us. We, the great majority, the overwhelming majority of us, are not racist, no matter how much Black Lives Matter tells us the opposite. Now, as I say, most of us are not racist. We're still not over the moon about being accused of it. It's still an irritation. But there have always been people for whom it just doesn't register. Either they are people who are very, very sure about their moral positions, or they are people who just really, really don't give a shit. These are people who don't live near any black people, and consequently they don't have any black friends. Who cares if somebody in Islington calls them a racist? It makes no difference to them. But they are people who might actually object if somebody really gets in their face about it. They are people who might think that if a black person is continually attacking them for being racist, that might actually turn them against black people. They might think that that black person just doesn't like them because they are white. In the absence of any other evidence, like the existence of actual prejudice against black people, for instance, they might conclude that. They might actually come to believe that all black people hate all white people. And there are some pretty seductive arguments going around that might sway these people away from bland indifference towards outright hostility. Because you guys at Black Lives Matter are labouring under a misconception. The misconception that racism is bad. Now, for the record, I think racism is bad. I've always thought that. And I've always thought it a particular evil. But I've never thought that it was the worst thing in the world. But Black Lives Matter think it is. Black Lives Matter think that it is the very worst thing in the world. They think it is so bad and so evil and so unforgivable that people will do anything to avoid being accused of it. But that's not true. It's certainly not true anymore, even if it ever was. Now, it's understandable that the black person in a majority white society would consider it to be an important issue. Maybe even a very important issue. But it's not as important, for instance, as it would have been in Alabama in 1954, or even in Brixton in 1976 for that matter. And it's not nearly as important to a white person, because the world doesn't revolve around black people's grievances. Most people realise this. Most black people realise this. I hate to break it to you, but the colour of somebody's skin is not of paramount importance to most people, most of the time. But I will acknowledge, for some people, the colour of somebody's skin is important. For these people, there is nothing more important. We all know that this is true for the Black Lives Matter brigade. But what you may not realise, admittedly because you don't inhabit the same little corner of the internet as I do, where these opinions come up at the edges, is that these people are white. These are white people for whom the very idea of racism is not in itself a bad thing. Race is absolutely central to their worldview, just like it is to you at Black Lives Matter. Now, you can dismiss these people as white supremacists, but they'd agree with you by calling them that. You're not dismissing them, you're validating them. They agree with you that the single most important thing about you is not the grey matter between your ears, but the melanin content of your epidermis. Your intellect, your character is of no import to them. To them, you're just a black man. Because they know that that's all you think of them in return. They know that to you, they can never be anything other than white, and therefore racist. They know that there is absolutely nothing that they can do that will alter your opinion of them. Not even getting on their knees. And they're not about to do that. And I don't blame them. Because you are sowing this hateful, reductionist and insulting wind, don't be surprised if it's you that reaps the whirlwind. And as hateful as these ideas are, if the choice for the roughly 60 million white people in this country is either kneel to the black man or retreat into the safety of the racial tribe, what do you think they're going to do? What side do you think they're going to choose when they're given no other option? And you can dismiss them, if you like, as a tiny minority. But you don't know that. You don't know how many there are. The BBC, The Guardian and the rest of the mainstream media do not report on them. But these days that means next to nothing. When I started this channel, I had some success at first. But I was already at around 10,000 subs when a friend of mine alerted me to an obscure little channel called Morgoth's Review that had around 7,000. That was maybe a year ago. My channel reached the peak of 14,000 and has been slowly declining ever since. His channel is now at 30,000 strong and growing. I fondly imagine that my brand of inclusive adherence to Enlightenment values, regardless of racial background, would appeal to a silent majority. But the white identitarian Morgoth has overtaken me and now has more than twice the audience that I have. And he's not even the biggest one, with the iconoclast having over 200,000 subscribers. There was already serious resentment about political correctness and all the surrounding bullshit before this latest firestorm. But now, in the wake of George Floyd's shameful killing, this pot is about to boil over. As I've said, you may be thinking that you are on the cusp of something, with the toppling of statues, the removal of films like Gone with the Wind from platforms such as HBO, and the pathetic, craven obsequiousness of not only girly boys like Justin Trudeau and virtue signalling fifth columnists like Sadiq Khan. You may think that just one more push will get you what you want, whatever that is, other than the complete destruction of the free world. But you should be very, very careful what you wish for. Because you, Black Lives Matter, are poking at a hornet's nest, the like of which you cannot even begin to imagine.